Ka Nion Ben ka soka mudi ki riurit pat kala nang sawajur shakiwei ki ri ka perte. Ka Rashida Talib ka wei na ki Congresswoman jong ka USA ba katu kat ni ki he ka UN but US Commission Halor ka International Religious Freedom kala pen pau ya ka Jingshah kya Halor ka Jingshah le ben ki rit pat ki dalit bat ki baduk. Banyai ban Halor ka ni ka mat na kalyang jong ka US Commission on International Religious Freedom kala batha ka soka u President Joe Biden ban kran ya UPM mudi hakapor bu ulet che USA ban kran Halor ki kam ban ben ya ki rit pat Henry na kalyang u President ka US ula shukran tang dep. Kani ka conference ban kran Halor ka Jingshah ban ben ki we ki Niam rit pat ha India kalapan pau ya ka Jingkwa ban bu ya ka Ri India ha ka thup jong ka CPC Country of Particular Concern kamut ban bu ya ka Ri India kum ka we ni ki ri ba jur bha ka Jing ban ben ya ka hok long briu man briu tang na ka daw jong ka Jing ya pher Niam ne kas kini ki he ka soka US but UN Commission klakran ru habaya day ba ka Jingshah thang ki ying mani ha Manipur bat kumjuk ka Jingshah ta ki Muslim ha Assam na ka Jing kam ya ka NRC but ya ka CAA.
It's a personal issue for me. When I was a young man, my mentor was I had two mentors, Mark and Fulton Buntain, who had a work to feed the hungry and the poor in Calcutta alongside Mother Teresa. So I've grown up caring about this place and these people, and Mark never stopped to ask if the people, the thousands they would feed every day, if they were Hindu or if they were Muslim or if they were Christian. He just cared about them because they were human beings. But today I'm speaking on behalf of Uscirf, and as many of you know, Uscirf is an independent, bipartisan U.S. federal government body that's dedicated to promoting the universal right to freedom of religion or belief. And we seek to defend religious freedom internationally for people of all faiths or for people, and this is critically important, that don't have a faith. Throughout the year, we're monitoring religious freedom conditions and make policy recommendations to the President, Department of State, and Congress. The topic of today's briefing is appropriately titled, Why the U.S. Must Designate India as a Country of Particular Concern. In the days and weeks following Prime Minister Modi's visit to Washington, this discussion is particularly important and timely. During Prime Minister Modi's state visit, we publicly urged the Biden administration to raise religious freedom concerns in its discussions with the Indian government. Religious freedom was mentioned briefly during the visit, but was not a focal point. When directly asked, Modi denied that discrimination of religious minorities existed in India, suggesting that steps did not need to be taken. And we could not more strongly disagree. In 2020, Uscirf recommended the State Department designate India as a country of particular concern, or CPC, for its systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of religious freedom. We made this recommendation again most recently in our 2023 report. In the time I have today, I would like to go through each of these criteria and highlight just a few of the examples and instances of violations that Uscirf is tracking. Uscirf's report shows that for the last several years, the Indian government at the national, state, and local levels has promoted and enforced laws and policies that undermine the religious freedom of its citizens. This has been both systematic and ongoing. In particular, state governments have implemented a number of legal restrictions on religious conversion, the ability for people to choose their own faith and what they believe, on religious dress, interfaith marriage, cow slaughter that negatively impact Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Dalits, and indigenous and scheduled tribal people. The national government also continued to suppress critical voices, particularly religious minorities and those advocating on their behalf, including using surveillance, harassment, demolition of property, and detention under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. State-level anti-conversion laws enable and encourage Hindu nationalists to target and discriminate against religious minorities under the guise of protecting Hindu faith and upholding state laws. Currently, 12 Indian states have legislation prohibiting religious conversion based on force, allurement, inducement, or fraud. However, these laws contain such broad definitions that they can be interpreted as prohibiting any kind of conversion, whether consensual or not. Anti-conversion laws are increasingly targeted interfaith marriages and interfaith couples. Under the Special Marriage Act, interfaith marriage requires a 30-day notice period, essentially allowing the opportunity for individuals to object to the marriage. In practice, anti-conversion laws targeting interfaith marriage restrain an individual's constitutional right to convert and choose their own faith and curtail the right to choose one's partner. These laws carry penalties of hefty fines and imprisonment. The application of these policies by government officials has created a culture of impunity for national campaigns of harassment and violence, particularly towards Muslims and Christians. And I would add here that at least 3 or 4 days a week, I get videos and notes and pictures of the horrendous violence that I'm describing here. So it's not something, and I've been there myself, of course, and seen it. I refer to these anti-conversion laws as the Hotel California laws. In other words, you can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. You have to have the ability to choose your own faith and have your own ideas. At the national level, the pilot implementation of the proposed National Register of Citizens, or the NRC, in the state of Assam continues to exacerbate fears of losing citizenship among Muslims who lack protection under the 2019 Citizen Amendment Act, which provides a pathway to citizenship for non-Muslim from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, in conjunction with the government's proposed NRC requiring residents to provide proof of citizenship. And it could subject Indian Muslims and others not covered to statelessness, deportation, or prolonged detention. Although its proponents argue that this is intended to help persecuted religious minorities, the law does not include other vulnerable religious communities such as Rohingya Muslims, Ahmadiyya Muslims, Hazara Shia Muslims, or Baha'i in its neighboring countries. Across India, there are many examples of particularly egregious instances of discrimination and targeted violence against religious minorities. Many sources highlight violence against individuals accused of cow slaughter, for example, or the prolonged detention of religious minorities. Most recently, however, reports continue to highlight alarming instances of violence against Christian tribal groups in the Manipur state. This has been going on since May. And over 50,000 people have been displaced and over 100 lives have been lost during the ongoing conflict between the state's majority Meitei community and the predominantly Christian Kuki population. The waves of violence have targeted religious symbols, places of worship and refuge, including churches and synagogues. And in total, more than 250 churches in different denominations and 2 synagogues have been burned and damaged across the state. And while this was happening, Prime Minister Modi was right across the street, denying it. In these and other instances, the quick spread of disinformation and hate speech on social media has stoked mob vigilantism and other types of communal violence. These are just some of the examples that highlight the particularly severe religious freedom violations taking place in India that warrant its designation as a country of particular concern. Uscirf remains concerned by these examples and other reports of ongoing violence and discrimination against religious communities, and we will continue to raise these issues today and in the days to come with the State Department and make a recommendation that these abuses be taken seriously, particularly the importance of designating India as a CPC. And when I think about this, I think personally of those I went and visited, pastors in this case, who had been chained to a wall in a prison in India for holding a small group meeting. That's the sort of violence that, to me, I've seen firsthand, and it's very personal. Thank you very much to everybody who cares about this.
As you all know, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has designated India as a country of particular concern for the last 4 years. We've witnessed severe and escalating attacks on religious minorities under Prime Minister Modi and BJP, not to mention a host of other serious rights issues, including internet blackouts, state-sponsored killings, disappearances that we continue to hear about, even in our office, and the targeting of journalists and political opponents. And yet, we know our own U.S. State Department has yet to designate India as a country of particular concern under U.S. law. So I want to thank Congresswoman Omar's leadership and courage in introducing House Resolution 542, makes the case, of course, and takes that step forward. I want to take a moment again for really truly thanking her for being consistent and being a strong voice for human rights in India as well as all around the world. The facts speak for themselves, and that's one thing that I wish we spent more time on here in Congress. Laws targeting interfaith marriages and relationships, the wearing of hijabs, and religious conversion, and the list goes on. They're all being targeted. These laws targeting freedom of religion and minority groups run against everything in India that India and America's friendship is built on. But let's be clear, we all know the movement against bigotry and hate is alive and well, both here in India, and we're working again very, very hard together in making again that fight a reality and actually achieving some change. I'm proud to stand in solidarity with all those who believe in our fighting for a better world. And don't let anyone tell you it's not possible. I come from Detroit, which is the most beautiful, blackest city in the country. And every corner is a reminder that the civil rights movement, the right to organize unions, the fact that we were able to literally get the right to vote is all because people demanded it in the streets, that community organizations, folks got together and made it happen, not because of who was in Congress or who was in the White House, but because the American people rose up and said, we have to do something. In addition to the resolution, I'm proud to have stood with colleagues in boycotting Prime Minister Modi's speech. This House should never be used as a platform to spread bigotry and hate. I'm also incredibly proud to announce just a few hours ago, myself and Congresswoman Jayapal, who's the Congressional Progressive Caucus chairwoman, as well as Chairman Pallone, we began circulating a letter today calling on the Department of Justice to uphold commitments under U.S.-India bilateral treaties and serve Dow Chemical with the legal summons for the disaster. It's about time that we do that, and again, we're circulating that letter and encourage you all to talk about it and engage other members of Congress to join us. The fact that this company, as you all know, who took responsibility for the disaster when they bought Union Carbide, has never been served is unacceptable. We know that one of the major roadblocks in getting justice for victims and survivors has been the fact that the majority of those victims are of Muslim faith or lower castes. And again, it just shows that the internal issues and bigotry that is within policy and how they implement certain protections for only some, not all. It's long past time that Dow Chemical, as you all know, answer for its crimes and pay restitution to those victims and survivors. Again, I'm really proud to lead with my colleagues in this fight and hopeful that we can finally move the wheels of justice forward this year. Thank you again, all of you, for this incredibly important dialogue. As somebody that's been here for 5 years, as you know, I'm a Palestinian American, but I'm also a child of immigrants, and again, come from a city that we've seen injustice happen and how the law is not applied equally to all of us, and including my neighbors, immigrant neighbors, and black neighbors to this day. And so when we talk about global justice and fighting the hate globally against bigotry, I always remind myself of a black pastor that told me in my city that we are not a world or a country that is divided, but we are disconnected. We must connect right away in understanding this is oppressive policies that will impact all of us if we don't see each other, again, as global human beings.